Generational differences in the workplace. This is the gift that just keeps on giving. I feel like often when I'm invited to speak to groups about workplace issues, there's a little nudge or a prompt to include something about generations. Inevitably, it sounds something like, hey, could you talk about the fact that we have more generations in the workplace now than ever before? And I don't know if we really have more than we ever had before. I think we're just maybe more aware of it, or maybe we're just dividing it along different lines. But there's always been an oldest generation in the workplace and a youngest generation in the workplace, and then generations in between. And we tend to look at each other from across that fence. We plant our flag in our own generational camp, and we look at the other generational camps, and we look for the differences. And I think number one, that's the mistake, is to look for the differences when really there's a lot of similarities. The data bears it out. If you look at, there's multiple studies out there that really show us that everybody wants the same things at work. It might slice and dice a little bit differently. There might be a little bit of a different flavor, but when we boil it all down, everyone wants to feel like they're succeeding at work. They want leaders they can trust. They want open communication and integrity in the environment. They want to be treated fairly. And now we're seeing, with the most recent environment, the past 2 years of this pandemic, people asking for some new things like additional flexibility and additional care and concern about some of the issues that we didn't talk about as much before, like mental health. So that's not a generational thing. That is really across all generations. So my advice when it comes to generations in the workplace, there's two things. First of all, let's walk away from the gross overgeneralizations. The next time you feel tempted or you hear somebody talking about a generation and stereotyping based on that generation, replace that generational title with any other immutable category, like race, like gender. Would we talk about people so casually and so comfortably, just boiling them down to that characteristic? I don't think so. I hope not. And so let's not do the same thing with people just based on the year they were born. There's a lot of diversity within these generations. And at the same time, it's helpful to understand that the way a person came up in the world, what they were exposed to, their early influences can shape how they show up at work. And for example, this youngest generation, they grew up with technology. The technologies that we're using today at work, they had in their hands from a very early age. They learned how to type. Do they even call it that? It's with the thumbs, right? They learned to type before they probably even learned how to write with a pencil or a pen. Technology is native to them. That's a difference, but it's not a massive difference. They just want the right tool so that they can be effective using their job. That seems reasonable. They also grew up with easy access to information. I was talking to my 13-year-old niece recently about the way we used to do reports, and I had to go to a library and I had to check out a thing called an encyclopedia, which she said, isn't that basically just like Wikipedia? Yeah, I guess so. She's never had to do that. Life is different for somebody who's always had easy access to information. And so one of the expectations of this younger generation is that you be transparent with information. If you don't give them the information, they'll go looking for it. And if the information you give them doesn't match up with what they find when they do their research, you're going to have a problem. And so what they've really brought to this workplace is more comfort with technology and more expectation around honesty, transparency, and straightforward communication. But again, if you look at all the generations, don't we all really want that? So really, we owe a debt of gratitude to the youngest generation because they are more comfortable speaking up and asking for the things that we all really want. Like generational differences, like any other differences in the workplace, it's really embracing those differences, appreciating those differences, and recognizing that there's a lot of nuance beyond the labels that makes our workplaces more rich, more vibrant, and really creates a bigger value add for the whole organization.